welcome back to Transplanting Podcast. This is going to be part 3 of us interviewing Dr. Kristine Coons. And this has been just a fascinating conversation so far. It's just been blowing our mind. And it makes understanding gender and sex just so much easier. The question that popped into mind, though, is I had talked to someone once and they said that they had explained that the going or the general consensus or theory right now was that uh, baby in utero is presented hormones for whichever sex the baby is supposed to be, but then mom presents different hormones like the chromosomes or DNA says it's supposed to be one, but then the mom produces the different one for the baby. Does that make sense at all? And that's
Yeah,
where
I think
trans
I know where
people
you're
may
leading
come
with that.
from?
I know exactly where you're leading with that. I actually have a quote from that research study I think you're referencing.
Okay.
So, as I move forward here, I think a lot of people would love to have the sources that I use.
Yeah.
Now, at the end of my slides, I have a slide deck that I use, and there's like 5 different slides of like, I think there's 100 different references. But,
If that's all.
but that's all. No, that's not all. There's way more than that. But I do actually have a slide of textbooks that I use on a regular basis. And let me pull up that slide really fast because I think a lot of people would enjoy that.
Okay.
And ones that I use, I actually own these books
I love the and own.
and own. And actually,
Hmm.
and gosh, I wish you can see it on the bookshelf is actually over by the cat. But the one that I actually found to be the most in depth and illustrative is which one is it? It's the eighth one down, Human Embryology and Developmental Biology, 7th edition by Carlson.
Okay.
This is the book that really hones it in.
Okay.
So if you really want a really good reference, I start with that one.
Okay.
But it's also pretty advanced college level stuff. This is like 300 level, 400 level.
Okay. Fair enough. So I guess there is a basis or foundation that would support that then.
Yes, yes. And it's actually in textbooks. It's not just journal articles anymore. This is actually materializing into curriculums that are out there already. And what I'm trying to do as a researcher and medical provider is get this into the curriculums of medical schools and continuing medical education for providers so that they can better approach or understand intersex individuals and gender diverse individuals so that they can better care for them and help them understand what on earth is going on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm looking at the look on your face here, Bear. Like,
No, just so many questions. So many. I don't even know which one to ask. You know, like that is so much good stuff.
yeah.
So,
I'm seeing a different chart here on the screen.
oh, this one, oh, I used this at the very beginning of my presentations. This picture, this map, comes from PBS, which of course, unfortunately, got shut down. I don't know why. It should be up there, but this is a map of different cultures around the world that recognize more than 2 genders. And it's still there. It's if you look up Two Spirits map on PBS,
Okay.
it's easily Googled.
I'm finding this interesting because I'm looking over at the United States and I'm seeing 4 different check marks there for just the United States.
Yeah. Well, for the native culture, Two Spirits is very much a part of recognizing more than 2 genders. The one that I always point out to people is there's the one in outer Siberia, up in Russia,
Okay.
and that one is also completely isolated from anywhere else in the world, and yet
So,
they recognize more than 2 genders. So we were talking about this map. Give me 1 second to catch my breath and
Mm-hmm.
drink Coke Zero. Yeah, so what's really fascinating about this map is no matter where you look at across the world, you will find that there are gender diverse cultures through different languages, throughout history, And it's all there. You can go back into ancient history, like Egyptian history, Greek mythology, and things like that, and you will find people trying to explain what's going on, the intersex individuals that they're experiencing, and not being able to fully do it.
So that brings me to a different question because I've heard quite a few arguments that people say you can be trans all you want, but when you die, they're going to look at your bones and it's going to be male or female. So when you're looking at culturally that there's a historical record of there being many cultures that have diversity,
Yeah.
is there also a biological diversity that people are seeing in ancient?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And when they talk about the bone structure, I actually even went into a little bit of a deep dive with this. They talk about the pelvic structure, the female versus male.
Right.
Well, when we talk about female pelvic structures, there's 4 different types of pelvic structures. One of them is actually called android, not like your phone, but the female pelvic structure appears to be more male-like. So can you tell based off of a pelvis one versus the other? Possibly. There's 4 different types.
The show Bones says you can.
Apparently. And it's also possible for male structures to appear more female-like. So it's not guaranteed one way or the other that that's the way it's going to always be. A Klinefelter's individual is more likely to appear female in bone structure.
Wow. This is so much.
I know. So I'm going to segue into talking about gender identity. And I love talking it from this perspective of gender identity as a relationship. And we're all familiar with the saying mind, body, and spirit. And we want to figure out how the brain develops in relation to the body. Why do we see gender identity? And what is it? How do we know what it is? And can we prove that it's there? Well, one of the challenges with gender identity is there's no specific part of the brain that we can point to and say, gender identity is located here. We actually can do that a little bit better with sexual orientation than we can do with gender identity. And the reason being is because with sexual orientation, it's an external manifestation of internal processes. Basically, you're relating to somebody else.
Right.
You're communicating with somebody else.
Right.
Whereas with gender identity, you are expressing an internal part of you, and we communicate that through word and language.
Right.
Something that when somebody is growing up may not be able to always do with gender identity. So they can't really describe, hey, I'm having gender dysphoria. Well, we can't do that with animals. I can't go to my cat and say, what's your gender identity? They're not able to communicate that.
Okay.
So the other thing we can't do is we can't ethically go in and, biopsy somebody's brain and say, here we are with, this structure that we can say is gender identity. Now, we can make assumptions that gender identity is somewhere in the center of the brain, the limbic system, just like sexual orientation is located primarily in the limbic system with a whole bunch of branches out. It's a network. What's interesting is if you think about it, gender identity and sexual orientation are related to each other. We actually do that in our own language. Think of the term lesbian. We are communicating with somebody with one word, our identity, our sex, and our sexual orientation all within one word.
Wow. So it's going back to the 1611 thing of you're female or you're not, but we're expressing it with a bunch of different identities with one word.
Yeah. So we've created in social structures this sense of what does it mean, for example, to be gay? Well, for our common vernacular, we're saying that you're a male that's attracted to another male, and that's your sexual orientation. So we use the term gay with this kind of overlapping between gender identity, sex, and sexual orientation.
Right.
Now, that's part of the problem is, are there exceptions to those rules? Absolutely. We can have trans women attracted to women. We can still use the term lesbian. We just expounded that word and added more layers to it is really what we ended up doing. So when we get to identity, I actually have a little bit of a struggle with using the term, the definition from Oxford, a person's innate sense of self, because it's very vague. It's incredibly subjective. And that's a part of the problem. People will come along and say your gender identity doesn't exist. Well, it exists. We just don't have the direct evidence that you want to prove that it exists. We have tons and tons and tons of data, indirect data, to say that gender identity exists, and variations therein exist. Here's another really fun diagram. It's a whole bunch of lines.
Oh my gosh.
Whoa.
Whoa.
So if you go to the website, The Highest of the Mountains, this is a representation of the brain neural map.
I mean, for somebody that is just listening,
It's a whole bunch of lines.
it looks like someone drew a bunch of parts all over the page and then let their kids scribble
Yeah, it looks like spaghetti.
with a lot of, like, they gave the whole box of crayons to this thing.
It
Yeah.
reminds me of like a city's public transit map. You know, like it's what it's like a map of all the different routes.
If the city was like in the future and there's 18 layers to it.
Yeah. Well, so that's what's really cool about this is how accurate this is I don't know, actually know, but I do know that this is a representation of showing parts of the brain that relate to each other, which makes
Okay.
sense. For example, if you take somebody's sexual orientation, the center of the brain, the limbic system, well, how do you relate to somebody? When you look at somebody, you say they're attractive. Well, you look at somebody, it passes through your eyes, it goes into the occipital lobe, which is the back of the brain,
Yeah.
and it moves forward into the center of the brain, and all of a sudden, all those neural signals are going, woo woo, I'm attracted to you.
Woo woo.
Woo woo. You get the little butterflies in your heart, you get a little sweaty, and you go, whoa, they're hot. So guess where that also is close to? It's close to the pituitary gland. What does the pituitary gland control?
Not a clue.
Your sex, your gonads. Chemical signals are sent out, and all of a sudden you are like, oh man, I'm really attracted to this individual. But what's interesting with this is if you activate that system, we naturally have a way to turn it back off again. We apply this self-control, if you will. So there's this sexual attraction motive force that says, I am attracted to you, we're gonna have a sexual encounter. But on the flip side of that, hey, I'm gonna control that, and we're gonna have more fun together, we're gonna do dates and things like that. We're not gonna get to that point of a sexual interaction until later.
Does that mean that there's just not chemicals firing to that section?
Yeah, there's a repressive section that actually has a negative feedback loop to that portion of the brain. And what's interesting with this is if you look at a functional MRI where they look at the brain and you show somebody picture like erotic pictures and stuff like that, you can actually see parts of the neurons firing. For those who are asexual, this region of the brain that suppresses that is more powerful than the other part. This is where you get asexuality from, is a part of the brain that is repressing your sexual urges. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I imagine that the different I don't know if I'm using the right, but the neuron pathways?
Yeah,
Is
neural
that the-
pathways.
Neural pathways, right? I imagine that those, between different individuals, some of the pathways will be stronger than other pathways.
Exactly. There's a huge amount of variation. And then also along that same lines, you can actually also envision somebody who is bisexual. Because we've created this foundation network of how we develop, people can be attracted to both males and females. That's part of our makeup. That's how we can be. We can be asexual, you can be bisexual, you can be homosexual, you can be everywhere in between.
Is there
Genetically, neurologically, you can do that.
is there two Maybe I missed it. Is there two different sections that one would fire for being attracted to male versus female? So then there's different intensities of
You could. That's one way
is
to model it.
okay.
Yeah, you can imagine, like, for example, if you have sexual attraction is a region of the brain versus the negative feedback area. If you differentiate this area that's sexually attractive and repress it, it's putting a damper on it, if you will,
Oh,
pressing the brakes.
so it's more there's one sex driver and it's either activated or not activated.
Sure. Yeah.
What determines who it activates for?
That I don't know.
Fair enough.
That's your finding your special someone. That's chemistry being made, or whatever you want to call it, or even if you want to go into the realms of quantum entanglement and saying you're entangled with somebody else. I don't know that.
That may not be your specialty too.
That's not my specialty on this one.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Now, the reason why I bring up sexual orientation with all these models is, can we extrapolate some of that information into gender identity? Because we can't get to the area of the brain that's identity, we pull in some extra information. We have all this data about it, but is it possible for a brain to develop into recognizing themselves as male or female, gender dysphoria, agender, non-binary? Yes, all the above.
Okay.
And let me show you the other diagram that I have on this one. This one's a little bit convoluted, I guess. But basically what this slide is representing is there's different areas of the brain that specialize in different tasks. For gender identity, there's an area of the brain that is identified for a specific task that is related to how I see myself innately. What happens during development is the gonads are developing and there's a release of hormones, correct?
Okay.
So there's this influence on the brain that's supposed to say you're going to differentiate into male or female.
Okay.
Now, the Y chromosome in of itself is not necessarily active inside the brain as it's developing. The SRY gene, the Y chromosome, is very strongly influenced on the gonads. So as the gonads are releasing these hormones, there's variability in that. There's how much is actually produced. There's timing of production. There's the release. There's a pattern of release where it kind of stutters, or could it be consistent and then stop, or kind of like Morse code. It releases these hormones into the bloodstream. From the bloodstream, it has to get to the brain. Once it reaches the brain, it actually has to get inside the brain. So there's the receptors that are there. There's the distribution of the receptors, the number of receptors, and the production of receptors. So basically, what this slide is representing is that there's a huge amount of variability in how our brains mature, develop, and differentiate.
Makes sense.
And that's allowed, expected, just biologically. So I represent this last slide is the summation of all of this together. Variations of identity, expression, orientation, and sex are biologically natural, allowed, and expected in the natural world. How we approach it socially is up to us. Now, having that foundation, when we come along and we apply the terms male and female, all of a sudden those terms seem very insufficient to what we're trying to convey.
Right.
Correct.
Man and woman is insufficient. Because there's so much variability, do we add more words? Do we expound on these terms? And that's what we're running into with even the scientific field is, for example, when we do research in the past, we do demographics. So one of the questions we ask is, are you male or female? All of a sudden, research studies become, oh, there's a bias based off of that alone. We didn't account for the fact that this person could be intersex. We didn't account for the fact that this person could have other variations of development that we didn't account for. So all of a sudden, our language is now incomplete.
Yeah.
how do we move forward from here with incomplete language? And how do we research this better? That's a question that we're asking ourselves as scientists. And actually, there's a book that was just released a couple months ago called Sex and Gender Toward Transforming Scientific Practice that actually tries to talk about that. How do we research this topic going forward when we just broke the paradigm?
Wow. So the other day I sent you a video, YouTube video, where there is a man that was going to court and he was trying to sue. Is that what it was? He was trying to sue the town because he identified as a horse and he wasn't able to, they were mistreating him according to how he felt. So I'm curious because how does something like that fit into this, or does it? I mean, this
To be
is
honest,
a
I
lot.
think of it as a different neural pathway. So I don't, sex identity, gender identity is a different than that identity marker.
Okay.
So when we think of the brain, this is actually another interesting little tidbit. Just this last year, researchers mapped the neurons of the fruit fly in October 2024. So just a year ago, they created a brain map of the entire brain of the fruit fly. There was 150,000 neurons with 50 million connections. The human brain is 86 billion neurons and 100 trillion connections. Could that be that there's a different pathway that is going for that person? Could be. Could they also be trying to get out of a sentence? That's possible as well.
I mean, in this case, he was suing them over anything else, but I mean, he was way out of proportion.
It
Yeah,
was
what's
different.
interesting is we as humans, we usually think of the brain as just this one homogeneous structure, and we don't actually have this idea that there's these separate entities inside of the brain, these neural
Right.
networks. And so when we actually introduce these ideas of there are parts of the brain involved in sexual orientation and gender identity, most people are like, huh, what are you talking about? Yeah, there are regions of the brain specialized to these tasks, like memory and language and touch and sensation and all these things in between.
Right.
And of course, with 100 trillion connections, there's going to be variability of those connections. That's allowed, that's expected. We have everything from different abilities to learn, different types of learning styles. What's really cool with this is when I study this stuff, I can see even autism spectrum coming into picture with this.
Oh,
like
wow.
how that.
So autism medicine isn't what's causing transgenderism.
No.
Or maybe transgenderism isn't the right word to use again. Maybe, because of the individuality, right?
Yeah, autism is not caused by vaccines, but is there a relationship between autism and gender identity variations? There's some, but again, when you look at the genetic makeup of how that works and functions, when I look at that developing, there's genes involved and overlap between them. Again, we only have 21,000 protein encoding genes. If 6,000 of those genes are involved in gonadal development, those same genes could also be involved in nerve development as well, or brain development, just in different proportions, in different ways, in different timing. So it's kind of a different mechanism of action, and it's incredibly complex.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And with that many different connections, it's almost impossible to follow individual ones.
Yeah. So we're kind of at this point in medicine where we just kind of blew everything up and we have to kind of pick up all the pieces again.
And you're limited by technology.
And language.
And language.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. Women's sports. Trans women in women's sports is a hot topic today, right? Because
Yeah.
there's unfair competing advantages, or is there?
When you apply this model to exist, basically what it boils down to is the framework of binary in terms of sports, again, becomes insufficient to explain everything. Are there situations where you would have like a power lifter that can move 500 pounds on a bench press or whatever you want to call it, compared to a 50-pound individual who is, much smaller? Are there physical differences? Well, yes, but again, we also have female powerlifters as well. Would you compare that one to the 50-pound individual in sports as well? You would say there's an unfair advantage.
Right.
So sex and identity and expression, again, it's insufficient to describe how we use sports. We're taking a binary system. It's like taking a square and trying to fit it into a hole, a circle. It's not, I guess I'm not explaining myself very well with this one. Basically the concept of sports in my perspective, since I actually don't play sports, I could care less. I couldn't care less about sports in general. But when I'm outside looking in, I look at this whole entire situation. Like, so let's say women's volleyball, for example. Okay. You have taller people, you have smaller people. Taller people have an advantage. And there was an example where somebody said, well, this trans individual hit the ball so hard that they injured this other player.
Right.
But if you actually look at the statistics, there's injuries that happen all the time. People get hit in the face all the time.
Right.
And those taller individuals are able to hit that ball just as hard as this transgender individual.
So do you want to discuss maybe a little bit of the link between hormones and how they affect? Because we're seeing two different topics come up, right? About, well, don't give youth puberty blockers because that's going to affect them later in life. But then also we're seeing, do the hormones actually change the individual enough to give you a fair competing advantage?
Oh, that's a good question. So this gets into the realms of ethics.
Okay.
And when we come up with these ethical models, and actually this is one of the important things that people need to realize with science and medicine, is that we actually have ethical teams. We have bioethical teams. I actually have a book on bioethics on my bookshelf.
Of course you do.
So I've been studying it, and it's one of those things like, how do I approach this topic from a ethical standpoint in terms of society structure? And there's a diagram at the very beginning. I actually read it a couple months ago, and I'm forgetting the diagram, but it's one of those things where we run into these ethical dilemmas. How do you approach this topic? And that's not an easy thing to delineate, especially on like a podcast forum.
Fair.
I don't know if I have a good answer for that right away. I would have to research it.
And that's what you're good at.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
That's a fair answer too.
Mm-hmm.
This has been so much. I wanted to bring up one last thing, right? Is
Sure.
We are seeing in the politics today that there is medical associations that are being I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, where the I just forgot the word. Anyway, where they're saying these medical, you can't trust these different medical associations and the research that they've done because it doesn't agree with us, right? We're seeing where they're wanting to do a NIH study about trans people and how trans people don't exist, right?
Yeah.
Do you have anything you wanted to talk about on that?
Yeah, so I guarantee you, because I'm at the edge of a lot of this research and stuff like that, that people will come along and Dr. Coons is crazy. They'll actually use probably he doesn't know what they're talking about. Mental illness is another common thing that I see all the time. And the research doesn't support it. Well, in all reality, what they're using as biases. They're anchoring on their favorite topic. And the reason being why they're doing that is for rhetorical goals. They want to maintain a social hierarchy where men are superior or have power and authority over women. And one of the things that's frustrating to them is transgender women existing disrupts that paradigm. How dare a man become a woman? So which eventually evolves into, well, if they can't do that, we can't dare them to do that, we can't allow it because it disrupts our paradigm.
Right.
Well, the science behind all this already exists. It's already existed for decades. We're just now presenting it to the world in such a way that it's cohesive and accessible.
Right.
So when people come along and say, well, transgender individuals can't exist, they're anchoring on information they pulled from 1911. Because they're pulling from that Reginald Punnett book.
Yeah. Basic high school biology.
Basic high school biology.
Right.
Whereas I can present mountains upon mountains of evidence to support where we're coming from with this.
Right. Well, and I pulled up a list real quick, if you don't mind. There's I pulled up a list of different organizations and associations that support the science behind transgender people existing. Right. We got the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, American Academy of Dermatology, the American Academy of Pediatrics, American Academy of Physician Assistants, the American Medical Association, American Nurses Association, American Association of Clinical Endocrinology, the Association of Geriatric Psychiatry, the College Health Association, College of Nurse Midwife. All of these have American in front of it, by the way. College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, the College of Physicians, the Counseling Association, the Heart Association, Medical Student Association, Psychiatric Association, and it keeps going. And there's 30 more different associations that all run with the same research and agree with it.
Yeah. So it's not even just like WPATH. It's all these medical organizations, thousands upon thousands, if not tens or hundreds of thousands of providers, medical researchers, and things like that, that are in support of the existence of transgender individuals and gender variation. Now, the arguments, of course, are going to come down into ethical dilemmas and things like that.
Okay.
But in all honesty, the science that supports the existence of intersex individuals, gender variation, it's all there. You know, the only reason why people, try to dissuade or go against it is for rhetorical goals, maintaining social boundaries and power.
Right.
That's all they're doing it for.
No one likes change, right?
Nobody likes change.
It's uncomfortable.
Gosh darn it. Darn that uncomfort.
I love it. Is there any shameless shout outs that you want to go ahead and put out there for either some of the different sources or I don't know.
I think
a lot of people will like refer to different pages or associations and companies, whatever, to say, here's, shout out to these guys for what they do in here and here. I don't know. I just was wondering if there's anything else you wanted to add.
I work with such a large group of individuals and universities that I don't have any one particular group of people to point out and shout out. I also want to maintain the privacy of the researchers behind this.
Of course.
Sure.
Me being a front open book and things like that, I'm willing to have people target me and say, no, she's crazy. And, but at the same time, the evidence is there. I have the books to prove it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the charts.
And the charts.
Actually, those charts that you saw right there, I created.
Right. I love it. This has been just fascinating for me. There's just been so much, it's so much to process. Like, that's not even just a quick, oh yeah, we heard it and everything's good. Like, this is one of those episodes that you have to listen to several times over to just try to digest it. I mean, that's so much information you just provided us with.
I think I hit maybe 10 of the 60 slides that I have.
I'm sure there's so much more involved than what you're giving us. I mean, you're just kind of skimming the surface for people like me that don't understand this stuff. But I mean, that was wonderful. This has been wonderful. This is something that I think a lot of people in a basic understanding can share with a lot of other people to increase understanding. And that's the purpose of this podcast, is to increase understanding.
And
So
that's what I hope. That's actually to give people tools of understanding so that they can understand themselves in relation to other people. And with that, they give themselves tools of empowerment. And
yeah.
to be able to actually say, oh, I understand now why I am the way I am, that makes a difference to somebody.
Yeah, yes, it does. It does. It's not just some fairy tale or myth that someone's, putting out there. Oh yeah, this is me. There's science behind it.
Hmm.
So I love that. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This has just been
Yeah,
so informative. I have loved every minute of this, and I honestly I was so surprised when you were just so gracious to just come on this podcast. Having
Mhm.
that common friend just made all the difference. And like I had goals when I built this podcast of being able to find someone in the position like you to come on the podcast, and I find that so quickly. And you were just so glad to come on here. You just made my job so easy. And I was stressed about the studying up on this and being ready for it, and you've just made all of this so easy. And so I can't say thank you enough.
you're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yes, and I too want to thank you as well. That is fantastic work, and the world needs more people like you. They really do. And this has been a privilege to see where you're at in the research and see what it says. When I agreed to be on the podcast, I had one goal, and that was just when people listen in and they tune in, I just want them to learn one thing, and learn something they could take away from the podcast. And you just delivered
80
so
things.
yeah. And so I can't. I mean that. Yeah, it makes my job easy too, because I want people to learn. And you nailed it. That is such fantastic work. Absolute privilege having you on.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
Yeah, happy to answer questions. There's so many pathways that we can go down with this, basic foundation. And that's kind of what I do from day to day, is like, I have this question about this topic. And that's one of the nice things about this, is I get to go into all these different fields of study and just dig down deep, and like, how does this relate to us as humans?
Right.
And it really is becoming in this reframing of how we approach this topic. And I love it.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Thank you. Again, just thank you so much. We loved having you here. Um, for I don't know, all of the listeners, I just
yeah.
oh my goodness, just that was so much. I don't know. Barry, you want to close this out?
Yeah, and thank you to everyone tuning in, and you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, TikTok. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, and you can also email us at transplainingpodcast.com. We definitely enjoy hearing from all of
It would
you.
be info at Transplanting Podcast, or off the website.
That's, yeah,
Oh
you
yeah.
can drop an email. And yeah, we will see everyone next episode.
All right. Welcome
And
to the family.
as always, welcome to the family.
All right.